They flew everybody up there to fire them. How would you possibly think that flying everybody up and having them work on a meaningless PowerPoint presentation that wasn't even going to be shown? Like, what kind of culture is that?
We built a product for a certain customer. We're going to deliver for that customer and nobody else. And we're going to make that hard pivot and decision. And there is no buts, ifs, ands, wants, whatever it might be. We're going to do it.
Regardless of what people want to say about Gen Z and the new generation, we're getting a smarter workforce in regards to the ability to output work in a shorter amount of time.
And own your freaking pitfalls. I went in front of my entire team and I apologized to my team. I'm sorry you let them down.
It's a culture thing.
To slow down because you're supposed to, I guess. Good speakers speak slow.
Have you heard how fast I speak?
No.
What did you say?
I speak really fast.
You used to watch Obama speeches and like mimic, because he's a great speaker.
Yeah, I used to
Don't get me
mimic.
wrong.
Yeah, we're not going.
We're not going there.
We're not going.
Stop it, Ryan. Stop it. All right. We're gonna cut that. We're gonna cut that off.
Yeah, we're gonna cut that. We'll cut that part.
Well, no, we're not actually gonna cut it. But we're just gonna cut him from talking further.
Oh, okay.
We don't want him to.
No,
go
he was.
Cut me talking about cutting.
He was a great speaker.
He is.
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the ASOM Pod, where we talk a lot. E-com is the path that we walk a lot. From 4 point of views when we're talking shop.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the ASOM Pod, a show about perspective from the eyes of an agency, SaaS, operator, and a marketer focused on the D2C space, e-commerce, and retail. With over 55 years of combined business experience, founding over 12 different companies, we're excited to bring you this episode. All right, let's go around the room. I'm going to introduce everybody. We're going to start off here with John Roman, the Android-loving survival king, four-time founder, currently leading as the CEO and co-founder of an outdoor adventure brand called BattlBox, and he's got a Netflix original series called Southern Survival. We've got Amer, formerly known as the Prince of Bosnia, CEO and co-founder of Praella. He's the Webby winner, four-time founder, the branding experience king, and he builds website experiences for the famous Billie Eilish, LeBron James, Rihanna, Paris Hilton, BattlBox, and so much more. And then we've got Bryan MacDonald, the self-proclaimed funniest dude on LinkedIn, two-time founder of the Mika. Anything but salad is what you'll find him on Instagram. He's their sponsor. He's our sponsor rapper, the funny guy, the marketing extraordinaire. Some people say that he's the reason why we're funny because of him. Yep. Probably is true.
Someone said that yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Dennis.
Yeah, someone did. They said they only think that, without Bryan, we'd be boring people, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I think I'm pretty funny sometimes, too. So, anyways, he's the director of e-commerce at Almost Pride. I am, the original raw pet food company. Usually, I'm generally described as a funny guy, and I'm like, wow, he's the funny guy now. I'm like, that's different.
Remind me tonight, I have a bag of raw dog food I want to talk to you about.
Oh, okay.
I brought it with me.
Done.
Oh, okay. And my name is Jimmy Kim. Yeah. I'm the three-time founder, currently CIO and founder of Sendlane, formerly a brand owner, email and digital marketer of over 15 years. A special quick mention and shout out, first things first, if you want to hang out with us and find where we're hanging out and chatting and conversing on an everyday place, come check out Creators Combine, where the awesome community lives. It's available now for agency, SaaS, operators, and marketers.
It's a great group. You're talking about best practices, what's working, what's not working. Highly recommended.
Yo, and then like the stuff that's on there as well, like is our scenario based that you wouldn't really get anywhere else. Like someone said the other day, hey, I have a buddy that's in a dilemma. He had some stuff imported in a 3PL in Mexico that was closing down. Hey, what do you guys recommend doing in that situation? And that you don't really get that anywhere else.
Everybody got tactical.
It was really cool.
I love it. It's small enough and it's really intimate right now, and it's a really great place. I've been ramping up with the SaaS side of the community as we've had a couple members join now, and I'm really excited to just have their perspective from their angles too.
Yeah.
Also, a big shout out to our other sponsors. We got Recharge, the #1 subscription platform for Shopify merchants for your subscriptions. Definitely check them out. We got Gorgeous, the #1 help desk platform for Shopify merchants. And I don't think they're both either just for Shopify. I think they might do BigCommerce and some other people. They obviously do BigCommerce.
Yeah, you use Recharge.
Yeah, so Recharge is not for just Shopify. It also does other platforms as well. All right, guys. Well, we're going to jump into the next episode here. And this episode number 11 is all about war stories. And so, look, businesses aren't roses and sunshine. Social media glorifies this often with a narrative that we hear often. And, us as founders, especially, like when we think about things, like we hear about companies that went from 0 to $100 million overnight, or, they fundraised a lot of money with this huge valuation number, getting huge multiples. I mean, that's been a thing that we've seen in this market, right? Getting huge multiples and you just automatically assuming that you're going to get that same multiple. Or we even try to follow people's blueprints. I think that's been a really interesting thing to watch. People follow, and companies have trailblazed different playbooks, and people are trying to follow. But the reality is, building business is like going to war, guys. You know, not only do you have to win all the battles, but you have to a war that can actually never be won, in my humble opinion, when it comes to business, because you're always at war trying to win and be the best, right? And the closer and closer we get to winning, the closer we get to our ultimate goal, which whatever it could be, from selling to IPOing, or it could just be a great reoccurring lifestyle business, you know? Whatever the goal is, that's the only way we win that war. So the topic today is about war stories. And I think, you know, what's interesting is that we've got the bad times and the good times and different things that we have. And, you know, one of my mentors once told me, which is really interesting, is that people in business tend to fail at celebrating their good times, and they only reminisce about their good times.
I'm guilty of that.
I am too, because what happens often is we as leaders tend to get focused on the next problem, the next growth, the next stage. We often forget about celebrating and enjoying what we actually had. And I'm just as guilty as all of you guys are on this. And it's really interesting. And I think that one of the ways that can be really interesting is that when we talk about some of the struggles and the bad and the good times, it really can show that it takes time, right? It's really a war that you have multiple battles, and some of those battles you win and you do a great job, and you can go back and remember. So let's talk about struggling and struggles and, you know, the bad times and the good times and some of the game plans. I'm going to start with you, John, because you started telling me the story. I said, hold, tell this on the pod, you know, tell us about the story.
Which we're talking about the one from the previous job?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. This is a masterclass in what not to do. So this is pre-BattlBox. I'm working at this sales organization, small, relatively small. They're doing about 120 million in revenue. They don't have a B2B direct sales channel. They have just a partner side. And they've attempted direct to business, B2B, before a couple of times through the years. They've been around for a while, like 20, 30 years old. They've just never successfully executed it. So I got recruited, brought on to lead the Atlanta market, and they were going to literally replicate this model that the company I came from had done successfully and gone public and became big. So it was a great opportunity. The company I came from, I was consistently one of the top salespeople for the company. So it was a great opportunity for me. I was the third market that was open. So they opened up Houston, they opened up Dallas second, Atlanta was third. They had this big, audacious goals of 20 market in 2 years. Even if they fell short, it was going to be a great opportunity. So when things started to go a little sideways, so Atlanta, we were the third market. Then 6 months, we were outproducing the other two markets. And within 6 months after that, we were just crushing everybody else. But they were still doing well, relatively. But one of the things we did consistently every quarter, the leaders would come up. They were based out of Southfield, Michigan. And the leaders would come up, the market leader from each city, each state, come up there and present, quarter in review, show how we did revenue-wise, and then give an upcoming forecast. So we were doing this was about a year into it. At this point, Atlanta's top, and we're not gonna fall to anybody else. But we had stopped opening up markets because they were having some internal issues. So we all came up there, and my boss, Jack, that was in charge of the East Coast, he had a flight before me, and like by an hour. So he was going to be at the hotel when I got there. I was going to call him, grab a drink with him, talk about the next day. I get there and I land and get to my room, call his room, and they're like, he didn't check in. He canceled his flight. He canceled his room. That's not good. Call him, straight to voicemail. He's on a plane, but his plane was before me. He calls me at like 11 at night and he's like, hey, heads up, I'm in Dallas now. And I'm like, what are you doing in Dallas? He's like, well, in the morning, I'm terminating the team. And then I'm going to Houston. I'm doing the same thing. We're going to keep a couple of people. Oh, by the way, everybody that you're up there with, all the other leaders and senior execs, they're all getting canned in the morning. Everybody's getting canned except for you. They flew everybody up there to fire them. Talk about just bad culture, bad move. Shame on horrible. Next morning, I take an Uber with these guys. They're like, hey, look at my presentation. What do you think? Do you think I should talk about this? Do I talk about that? And I'm sworn to secrecy and I can't let it out, but it's just super, super awkward. And the company does this. They literally, at 9:30, we'd been there for an hour and a half. They both get a email calendar invite to another meeting, and I'm not on it. And then I get grabbed by head of sales, and hey, trying to be positive about it. But it was just, how would you possibly think that flying everybody up and having them work on a meaningless PowerPoint presentation that wasn't even going to be shown? Like, what kind of culture is that? It is just a war story. It's a story that I'll tell many times and I'll never forget because it told me, hey, wait, if I'm building something later and I have team and I have culture, like how do I ensure that I never go down the path that they went down?
But what's interesting about this, John, and I'm going to take the perspective of the business and the company right now, is it's never easy to make a decision. Now, would it purely be the fact that they made you guys come up and then they made a decision that way? That was the fault there? Or was there more to that, you think?
So there was more to it. So, I mean, these big audacious goals that they sold everybody that was on board were far from happening. Like a year in, we should have had 10 markets opened. We should have had additional sales teams. My initial headcount when I came on, I was going to have 3 sales teams, 3 sales managers. So call it probably roughly 30, 35 salespeople in Atlanta. And I was at 8 with no sales manager. I was the sales manager still. So there were some missed expectations on what growth looked like. It was already a festering wound. And I think that in combination with the poor execution of shutting it down and then taking it a step further, and this kind of brings the point and answers your question with some validation of just bad culture and bad behavior. Fast forward after that event, I was very upfront with them. I'm like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. Well, you're going to have more team members. You're going to have some people in Dallas now reporting to you, some people in Houston. Yeah, but are we opening up more markets? Are we growing? Like, you're not aligned with what I want. And I was very upfront. I got back to Atlanta. I sent an email to them. And I basically said, I know what you guys are doing. Like, I understand the business enough that you guys are probably trying to find an acquirer and you're getting thin and lean. And you're not in this growth mode anymore. And that's okay. I can realign to what you're looking for. You have through the end of the year to figure out how to include me in this and how to get me aligned to build what we're trying to build to. Yep. And sent it to the CEO and the head of sales, copied my boss on it. I ended up sending 2 follow-up emails throughout the year. Never a response. They were reading it because you could track that, right? So I got buried at the end of December. We take an anniversary trip last week of the year. I came back, and when I came back, I gave my resignation.
This ad is dedicated to all the brands out there who are struggling with subscriptions, to the people out there with churn rates higher than their mortgage. Y'all called the police on us, and we're just trying to get you on recharge. And now look where you are. You know what I'm saying? It's all good, baby, baby. It was all a dream. Welcome to the recharge scene. Retention just double, celebrate with your team. So watch your churn go down. Every single day we said that recharge will turn you around. There's 20,000 brands that they serve. If your first name is Jay, they'll make your last name Curve. Trusted, robust, and dynamic. They'll make you money while you're laying in the hammock. Just kidding. I wish that was how life worked.
Here's the really messed up part. So, I gave a 4-week. We agreed, okay, we can probably do this in 2 weeks. And then a week in, they were like, hey, let's just go faster and get you out of here. That's fine. Very unusual behavior, but I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that line at all. So the last couple of days, and this was on on a Friday. It was going to be my last day. I spent the last days getting sales funnel, bringing in engineers from corporate, other sales help to basically ramp everybody up and make new connections so I wasn't needed. And they had me as the messenger of this. And there was a theme, and it was, hey, I'm leaving. I'm not needed because of the size anymore. That's okay. You guys are all good. You guys are all fine. You're just going to have more support from Detroit. It's going to be great. And they had me say this over and over every day and create this narrative. That was on a Friday. Wednesday, I started a new job that Monday. Wednesday morning, I get a phone call. They fired my whole entire team.
Wow.
3 days later, after roughly a week of having me pitch this BS narrative to them of how they were all safe and how this was the future and this was the best move, and they went and fired everybody. Fired them remotely. They had Jack, who was in Atlanta, fire them all, and then fire himself afterwards.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So
Does
great
this company
question.
exist anymore?
No, they got bought.
Okay, so they still got bought.
Yeah, they accomplished their goal. They got super lean, and they sold for a nice multiple.
Wow. Well, that's a game plan that you don't want to follow, nor is it one that, and someone who's, I know you've had a business get acquired and then, whatever, but you didn't and wouldn't align with that kind of culture ultimately.
Same thing, yeah. There just wasn't alignment.
I mean, in the last episode, Ryan mentioned what companies are responsible for, and this is the type of blank that people got to do better.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All right, so let's keep going here. Let's talk about another war story. What's another one? We talk about bad and good. I'll let you pick the bad or the good you want to talk about. Let's talk about something you've had as a recent war story and how you guys figured it out. I'm talking about a successful completed one, not a active current one.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna relate this back to small business when I was a wedding photographer and I started in the wedding photography industry, and I was there before COVID, obviously, and there was a time when I said I need to do more than just shoot weddings. So wedding season typically, right, is your early summer to late fall. after that, you have like a 5-month lull. No one's really getting married. There's not a lot of business coming in. And at the time, I was just trying to make as much money as I could, right? I was no kids, girlfriend. And I got into like real estate photography. I got into newborn photography. I got into a bunch of stuff because in my eyes, my skill set generated a different output based on what was on the other end of the camera, right? So I did all that for years. And my group that I was shooting weddings with, they called me crazy. Oh, enjoy your time off, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, no, like I'm just going to take advantage of my skill set, which is taking photos. What I'm taking a picture of is irrelevant, right? In regards to my skill set that I've built. So, fast forward to me being in the gun industry, COVID happened. And when COVID happened, the wedding photography industry took a massive inverse deep dive. Like, I mean, no one was getting married. If they were, it was very small backyard. They weren't spending the money. It was very, very hard to stabilize your wedding photography business. And I had 2 buddies reach out that were, one of them was from New York, one of them was from Boston. And they used to make anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 a year shooting weddings. Wedding industry took a deep dive and they had no money coming in. By no money coming in, they went from 300 to 100, right? Which is a big deal when you built up that sort of size of a business. And they were like, hey, like we're thinking about like, doing some real estate stuff. Housing market's going crazy or whatever the case may be, but they haven't built that in the past. So it was very hard for them to pivot during hard times because they didn't have a portfolio to showcase. So I helped them out and I connected them with some folks for them to get some like initial jobs to get that done. But I think about that on the business side of it, where you always have to have a pivot or a plan B based off your skill set or whatever your business is, right? Like in my eyes, if I'm relating it to the agency side of it, what you do, I see commerce in general in 10, 20 years. I see websites almost becoming obsolete to the point of we're an app-based industry now where everything that we consume, whether it's on a television or phone, is app-based. Everything we go on is within an app. So I see in another couple decades us consuming consuming the things that we buy in an app form. So like, let's just say, flip of the switch in 12 months, like websites were becoming more and more obsolete and brands wanted to push more on commerce channels via social or apps. Amer has a skill set to, and which he's already done, built apps for brands and companies where they can change their main commerce channel from acquisition and purchase standpoint from website right to app because he's done it. So I think plan Bs and a pivot point in companies and brands is very crucial because you never know what's going to happen, right? COVID really woke me up in that eyes in regards to how to get money coming in when things change. And things change, we can predict whatever we want to predict, but when that time comes, you have to be able to pivot whatever you're doing, right? So when we're watching Netflix shows, when we're watching movies and on television, in 10, 20 years, we're going to be purchasing what we're seeing on those TV shows on the couch. We're going to be able to click the remote. I love what Jessica Alba's wearing. Jessica Alba reference from 2 episodes ago. Love her. I love her blouse. My wife loves her blouse. I'm going to click and purchase as I'm watching the show. Or I'm going to go on the Jessica Alba blouse app, whatever the case may be, right? We're going to get further and further away from websites in my eyes because it's more time for the consumer. It may seem like it's quick now, but in 10, 20 years, it's too much time for us to go on the website, type in a website address, go through the whole funnel, checkout process. It's not streamlined. So now how do you take your skill set when shit hits the fan and move it to developing another channel that's on the upcoming, right? Or something happens. So in my eyes, now I transferred that over to the gun industry side of it when it's very political. Like someone wins, your business could flip-flop unless you have something that's bringing in money. And that's when I developed the membership program at Target Sports when I was there. I was like, we need some sort of money coming in here depending on who's in office. It doesn't matter if Obama is in at the time or Bush or Trump, doesn't matter who's in. We need money coming in and we need another source of income based on different things that can happen in your landscape. And my takeaway a war story is having plan Bs and Cs and Ds and having a pivot point in revenue in order to deal with those sort of times.
No, I mean, I love the pivot topic because the pivot is what makes a great business a great business. I think all of us have taken some level of pivot. It's just something you have to do in this business. And the faster you can make that decision to pivot, it's really hard. I mean, for me, I can tell you like one of my hardest pivots, I've had a lot of things that I've done, but I think about some of the war stories of some of the things I've done. So when I started Sendlane, Sendlane in 2017, 2018, right around there when we started Sendlane and building it, we weren't built for e-commerce at first because we didn't have a product for that, but we needed revenue, right? So we were selling to content creators, affiliate marketers, newsletter people, political people, anyone who needed to send emails, they would use our platform. We were in the background building this new platform that we're going to focus on e-commerce. The biggest pivot that we had to take, and one of the ones that I look back is probably one of the most important things that I did in this business, was the fact that one day I realized that the new product had launched and it was time to say bye to the old product. And what I mean by that is not to close off people, but stop selling to the people that I didn't want to be in my future, right? I wanted a certain profile of a customer. I was looking for, I had spent all this time, energy, and money to build this product, but we were so easy because we had great product market fit in this old market. It was so easy for me to call a couple people, get a couple referrals, get a couple sales, and boom, hit some money and put some dollars up on the board. But the reality was that wasn't a smart decision. So when we launched e-commerce in 2021, for probably about 3 to 6 months, we were kind of like, we'll still do the other one because it's available and the money's coming in, but we'll do this. And then there was a day that I just put my foot down and I said, team, we weren't signing customers that don't fit what we have built. We built a product for a certain customer. We're going to deliver for that customer and nobody else. And we're going to make that hard pivot and decision. And there is no buts, ifs, ands, wants, whatever it might be. We're going to do it. Dude, the team, I remember the sales team kind of looked at me and they're like, puppy dog eyes, like, oh, like, where's all my money going to go? But we figured it out, right? We scaled that new line of business and everything else. And we went from 0 and shot towards a 10 and like pretty quickly and fast in progression, right? And it might not look like it in company history, but because we made those pivots, I had in 2021, I had like $6-7 million ARR business on a different industry, not this one. And I essentially have had to lose all that money, build this new business back up at the same time. And it's been one of the weirdest pivots. But as I look back, I recognize that the decision that I made and the good decision I made was the pivot and the ability to not only just pivot, but stick to my guns on that pivot. And it's a risk, right? At the end of the day, but it's also one we had to risk. And that pivot also had a lot of learnings because making that pivot, it's not as easy because it's not just making the pivot of the decision there, but it's the playbooks and the business and the way how you run, how you service people, how you onboard people. All of these things became factors when you start to make that decision and change. And, I think that's what makes people bold entrepreneurs in this world is the ability to make that pivot and make the riskiest decisions, take the thing that was working and whatever, and make the decision to do something else completely different. So
it's scary.
Yeah, it is scary. I mean, it's definitely been one of those scary things. There's a lot of things that I look back in the business and go, man, that was dumb, but it worked. And man, that could have been really bad if it didn't work, But again, maybe it didn't fail because you just never let it fail. You never gave up. And that's probably the right answer to that too. Amer, I mean, you look like you got a story to tell, but tell me about, your pivots. I think what's interesting for you, man, is as I continue to learn about your story and continue to learn about some of your background, you've made a lot of pivots. You have even some of the businesses you serve and the way that you guys are serving them and who you're serving. It definitely sounds like you've found your customer.
To a degree, I think that I didn't have the problem that you had where you had to make this hard commitment. What happened to us, it was more about businesses challenging our process because we were getting recommendations. I mean, we started with very small businesses, then we went 1 to 5, 5 to 10 to 20 million a year. And now we're engaging with multi-billion-dollar companies that might have $100-200 million in revenue on e-com. And to us, it wasn't a problem of can we go sell to them. It was naturally occurring, or it is naturally occurring. Our problem is, wait, I can't have the same process for $5 to $10 million business as I do for a $20 to $30 million business. I can't have maybe even the same team or the same composition of a team for those. So in the last 6 years, we've constantly have to reevaluate our process to make sure are we serving people in the right way. And at first, and it was a lot easier to make a shift from 1 to 5, 5 to 10. It's still kind of...
So these are your GMV buckets of
GMV buckets,
So this is the businesses doing a 1 to 5, businesses doing 5 to 10.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a lot easier. But when you get to 20, 50, 100 million, you're talking about going from talking to an owner-operator with a very small team to getting on a call and there's 15 people showing up to a call with 15 different specialties and responsibilities. So it's okay, what do we need here? And then we came to the conversation conversations. We used to have one weekly stand-up, just general, get on there, and you can do that with a smaller business. But now I got to talk to their data team. Now I got to talk to their design or UX branding team. I have to talk to their business team. I have to talk to their accounting team. I have to talk to their shipping. And now we're going from having one weekly call, sometimes to 3-4 calls a week with a company in order to push a project forward. So that has been like kind of like my war story, just challenging our process. What are we doing? Our best practices. We just had a call, quite frankly, on Friday, and I kind of heard in silos and in certain meetings, our onboarding is no longer working. And we got on a call and we're like, sales, what are you guys doing? Design, what are you guys doing? Account managers, what are you guys doing? And we're like, we got to change it. It's not what it is. It's taking too long. We need to have a lot more touch points. We have to drive the conversations with these bigger brands with our old onboarding. They start to drive the conversations. As soon as a
Lost
merchant
control.
for us, it's over. It's over.
Yep.
And we can have that. We're the specialists and we just have to adjust it. It's not a big adjustment, but it's just about reprogramming the way the team approaches stuff. One more thing that I originally wanted to actually share, and it happened twice to me. And for anyone thinking about building a business, one thing I'm going to actually work backwards. So when I started Praella, I worked for our acquirer, and I was basically looking to leave, look for a different direction. And Bryan was talking about it last episode about companies not valuing employees, whether they're hiring them or not. So one of my things is actually the employer that I was with, he valued me a lot, actually offered me a lot of money and everything. I'm very grateful for it, but I just wanted something new. So I went out to the market, and the market I went out to is actually a lot of my competitive agencies right now. And I said, hey, I'm going to be on the market. I kind of like what you guys are doing. I'd like to learn more. Is there a way you think I can contribute to your business? Basically what I got back are very crappy offers. And then when I looked at myself, I was like, okay, that's fine. Now I'm going to take you down. I took that like, you actually think that I can't bring $3, $4, $5, $6 million to your business. And I went out and proved it, that I can do it.
It motivated you.
It motivated me. And at first, I actually didn't even want to get back to the game of like running. It takes a toll on people. And I felt when we sold our original agency, we didn't get what we should have gotten for it. It was just like, do I want to go through that brand equity building and all of that? So what ended up happening is I said, I'm going to do that. And I was all pumped up. I had a lot of connections with Shopify and a lot of different platforms. And I called Shopify. I was like, hey, I'm going to do this. What do you guys think? They're like, we're on board. We're going to support you with everything we got. I was like, amazing. So in the background, I started building website, business plan, pitch decks, everything I can do. And I gave them my 6 months resignation. And towards the end of, like, once I gave it, I started making these business plans and everything. And similar to you, my employer at that time said, let's expedite this. And they expedited it. And 2 months in, I called Shopify, which I still love. And I was like, I'm ready. They're cool. And they go to register me as a Shopify Plus partner, which takes a lot of time. But since I've been in the game for so long, they're like, we know Amer, can you deliver? Week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, nothing. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I reach out to my contact at Shopify at that time. I was like, hey, do you have an update? She's like, no, not yet. I'm still waiting. I'm not sure what's taking so long. A week later, I get an email back, and she's like, we froze our Shopify Plus program. We can't onboard any more partners. I was like, oh, okay. And
That's a problem.
it's a big problem. I mean, I walked away from a really good job. You know, I was relatively happy there and everything. I was like, okay, crap, what I'm going to do? And I was kind of in shock, actually. And we hung up, and I was like, crap. I was like, well, they have this Shopify Experts program. So I hit her back up. I was like, can you get me to Shopify Experts so I could at least have a listing that I'm associated with Shopify?
Right.
And same thing, week 2 goes by. We froze our Shopify Experts program. I was like, what the hell did I
What's the
just
time
do?
period? When is this?
What do you mean?
Year-wise?
This is like within, what year?
Yeah, what year is all this happening?
This is 7 years, 6.5 years ago.
Okay.
So what we were talking, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, 2017, 2018. And I'm panic mode. I have my savings. I don't have any money raised. And my biggest partner and source of revenue that I thought could be that I can leverage is basically just shut me down. And I go down, it's been like 2-3 days. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. I called them back up and I was like, what do I need to do to become a Plus partner? I'm not asking for a handout. I need to know what I need to do. And they said, bring in 3 leads. And
They had an answer right away.
yeah, they had an answer.
They had an
Bring in
answer.
3 leads, and then they're like, oh, well, no, she had to get answers, but they told me, bring in 3 leads, and I can make a case for you. And I went and I started doing work, I'm not kidding you, for 20, 30, 40 bucks an hour just to make it, just so I can pay my bills.
Of course.
I lived downtown at that time. My savings were depleting. Called my mom and dad. I was 28, 19 at that time. I was like, can I move back? I slept on their couch, by the way, after that for a year and a half. No complaints, no nothing. And I scraped. And then like once I moved back, it was actually 2-3 months afterwards. On one of the platforms, I met the owner. His name is Mika. Very grateful to him. He owned a company called MMAWarehouse. They were the biggest MMA supplier at that time, advertised with UFC and everything. And we met. He had Shopify Plus store. He wanted to also introduce another brand. And it was the first person I got. It was 2 months later. I went to another job board, found somebody that was going to migrate from Magento to Shopify. I went to another job board and did all these things. Now, I did this at huge discounts because I just wanted my 3.
Yeah, you had to get your 3.
I went to Shopify Plus and the rest is history.
Wow.
But it took me 2 months to find Mika and MMAWarehouse, and then it took me about another 6-7 months to get the other ones. And I was literally sitting there, I was like, do I just go find a job and this is not meant to be?
Yeah, because it's a grind, but so much of that is outside of your control, and it's timing.
It is.
So much of it's timing.
So that's one. And the other one before that happened is the first time I ever started an agency. It's the biggest lesson I ever learned in my life. I was in retail. I worked for Target and JCPenney. I could develop websites. I did them kind of throughout high school, but it was all kind of like small referrals. We're talking about $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 WordPress website, nothing huge. And I entered this business with one of my best friends, Sam, and we had zero experience, zero connections, zero anything. The biggest advice I can make anyone to avoid a war story, before you start a business, map out your network and figure out who can help you and how, because people will do it, and lean into that network. I had zero network at that point when it comes to anything that I'm doing now. Yeah. But now that I have built it out, you 3 and God knows how many other people I've met, I built credibility. It makes it a lot easier to start or even pivot a business when you can lean on people in the network. And the people that actually have helped me the most, starting like, for example, John, I didn't know John, and many other merchants and people at Shopify, Recharge, so on and so forth, is I didn't even know them and they gave me a shot. I had to deliver, but they gave me a shot. So like build that network out. People are going to give you a shot and just make sure you deliver.
Yeah, great. It's such a, I hate cliches. I hate them. Just like I hate the word omni-channel. But the cliche that your network is your net worth, every time I see it, I throw up a little bit in my mouth, but it's true.
So true.
It is.
Yeah, it's such an accurate statement.
It is. And now I feel like I'm in a position, and I'm sure you guys do in your right way. If I start anything in e-commerce, I feel people are going to give me a shot, and I have a leg up.
Well, you've proven yourself.
Yeah. You've made the shots.
Yeah.
Well, there's also that old like founder or like entrepreneur thing that they say, like the first time you find a company, you're worried about everything, but the one thing that matters most. And on the second company, you care about the one thing, which is distribution, which is like the thing that you think about the most.
Perfect.
And you think about like how to actually get it going, not how to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
There's like a difference in why second time founders are considered better, or third times and fourth time. We learn every time, I know, and we touch the fire quite often. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is like you're telling some of these stories, is all these stories that everyone's kind of talking about. There's a cultural side of this, but let's talk about the kind of the hardest truth of all of this, right? It's not always great times. There's a hard time in a decision that there's going to be. We're going to talk about something that I think like nobody really talks about. Let's talk about the layoff. Let's talk about that, because I think that this is something that people, and all of us, I've done them. I don't know if you've done one before or not. No, John's okay. This is good. I know you've done one. Have you ever been a part of or have done one?
I haven't been a part of one, but I've done one. Yes.
Okay, so you've experienced it on both sides. And I think there's a lot to it, because these are just the hard decisions businesses have. You lose a big client, for example. You just have a tough time growing and scaling. I've had that example, right? Whatever that reason might be that you have to make that hard decision, layoffs are a real part of the story. In today's economy, in today's things that are happening, well, they're happening more and more these days. And I don't know if they're using them as a crutch or they're using it as a different way, but you know, depending on what you're listening to, but like you think about like Intuit that just cut 10% of their staff off, or you know, Google or any of these guys that are doing these things. The thing that I think a lot of these guys fail at is anytime you do something like this, there's a huge cultural hit that may occur into your business unless you can do a better job with story and messaging and narrative.
Yeah, the Intuit one was a huge blowback because of the narrative.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that narrative of that they blamed it on performance, right? Now, the reality is and this is what I did, and this is why I'm like the perspective guy sometimes, and I like to look at every side of the story. I went on LinkedIn and looked at how many employees they had, right? And I said, okay, they've got, I think they had like 11 or 12,000 employees in their company. And I said they let off like 1,100 people. And I was like, that's 10%. That actually makes a lot of sense. Like your bottom 10% probably isn't producing, and getting rid of them probably is not going to make any difference, right? That's a pretty operational, like known thing in a business because there's just people who aren't. But the thing that I took from that perspective was, did they use something in the wrong manner and that's why it came off so bad? Or was it the messaging? Was it the narrative they told? Maybe they didn't control their own story ultimately of how that happened. Maybe if they would have came out up front and told everybody what was going on, there might have been opportunity.
And the market's the sensitivity in the market. People are more sensitive towards that stuff than they were previous.
But I don't think you can blame it on performance and do layoffs. If you're doing performance, then you have to coach people.
But there's a PE playbook, so private equity playbook.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Every year, the CEO goes and lays off 10% of the bottom end of the company.
But
That's a playbook.
Yeah, and that's like more like financial engineering, because then you can.
I agree and I disagree though. Like,
What do you mean?
the reality is it was, and maybe they were lying, but it was performance based.
No, I understand it's performance based. To lay somebody off, it's usually the company's not doing well in whatever else. Now, are we saying it's performance based? The company's not performing well, so we have to offload people? Are we saying they're not doing their jobs?
They were saying the performance of the
Of the
employee.
people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
The way I was brought up, and this is what I call target culture, and I use this to this day. You have employees that are not doing their job and they're not performing. The first question I ask, what am I not doing as a company to help you perform? And I'll sit down and have a conversation with somebody and ask them, what are we missing? What tools are you missing? How can I support you? A month goes by, and let's say there's no improvement from this employee. I'm going to ask them, did I give you everything that you asked me to give you? Let's say they say yes. I'm going to say, okay, I gave you everything. That means you don't need anything, but I haven't seen a change in you. That means now it's not a company problem. It's an employee performance problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Then you move it that way. So my thing is, if you're going to say at once 1,100 people got fired for performance and you didn't give them a shot or support to potentially change their performance, I think that's on the company.
Hey, how's it going? How can I help? I have the platform to handle any problem you dealt. Thank you for that. Yeah, but where is my belt? It was order 113 if I remembered it well. Hold on, 1 second. Let me see what I can do. It looks like end of day today is when your package is due. Thank you so much. Wow, you did that so fast. Wait, aren't you the only one you guys have on staff? Yeah, I am, but this helps in enormous ways. We appreciate your business. Have a gorgeous day.
I mean, I see the argument. I see what you're saying. But so, okay, I want a previous statement. I said no. I actually, in 2012, we did a pretty mass layoff. Got rid of about half of our sales leadership. I was on the good side of it, thank goodness. But so I have gone through it. But thinking of layoffs, right? You've gone through one. Everybody's gone through one. It's not last. It's very rarely is it last in, first out.
Yeah.
It's not. There is some sort of performance metric. You're stack ranking these people. I'm sorry, that's the reality. You are doing that. And you're making a decision based on performance. And it's the bottom 10% in the playbook, right? Like, unfortunately, that's the reality.
No, I understand that. I don't agree with reality. Now, like what I mentioned, now, if somebody's not performing,
Yeah.
I think every employee needs to know that they're not performing and have the ability to fix it. I'm not saying Intuit in this case didn't do that. I don't know the story.
Right.
But I'm saying it sounds really weird. If they have done that, and then they're going to find a date where all these magically 1,100 employees are suddenly going to get fired for performance being coached on. I would think maybe 200 people might have gotten let go a month ago, then 2 weeks later, another 100.
But you know why they do that, right? They don't do it because of that. If they laid off 200 people for performance and terminated them, they have 200 risky lawsuits in front of them, right?
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
But if they do it to 1,000 people in a layoff, suddenly it changes the narrative.
But that's my point. And it's not employee performance. You're still not controlling the narrative.
But they weren't performing.
That's a question.
But you have to, and I think from a lawsuit standpoint, you can't just fire somebody for not performing without documentation of the not performing.
Well, Amer, isn't it most states are an at-will state, though?
They are at will state.
So what does that mean?
You can let anybody.
For any reason.
For any reason, correct.
Legal or not, but any reason, you technically can.
You can, but there are attachments to that where you can hit it with lawsuits. My point, though, is like they could still get hit with lawsuits. My point is, in my opinion, it is not an ethical thing to do. And
I don't disagree with you.
yeah.
No, we're not arguing ethics here. We're arguing like, what is the right way to kind of think about it, and like,
yeah, and different companies do it for different reasons. And it's like, to your point, I know why they do it. I know how they do it. I'll be honest here. I had to, John knows this. I don't know if I told you guys, but I had to let 3 really good people go last month.
Yeah.
I never thought I had to lay people off. But mine, when I talk about performance, it wasn't their performance. It was
the business performance.
I had failed them to support a certain growth plan that I thought I could sustain. And I had to say, you know what, this is no longer viable. And I fought it for freaking 6 months.
So it was the performance of the business, right?
Correct.
But to make that decision, you had to look at your team and stack rank them at some capacity on performance.
On performance?
You didn't take your best, your ultimate number one rock star and get rid of them.
No, I didn't.
Why? Why didn't you?
Because I lean on them the most.
Because they're a rock star, because they perform.
Correct. No, I don't disagree with that.
No,
Yeah.
and I'm Yeah. We're on the same page. I'm just saying. Like,
all right, hold on. We're gonna go to Bryan here because he's quiet. I feel like he's been masterminding.
Yeah, no, I so in my eyes, I just feel like we've gotten smarter as like a business owner society. Like I always remember my grandfather used to tell me he was a full-time city employee for a city in Connecticut, and he was a painter for a school system. So he was there for over 30 years, and his job was to paint schools. There's only 5 schools in the city. He was a full-time employee for that city for decades. And back in the day, companies used to keep people on for a lot longer than they should have because they weren't as smart as company owners and boardrooms are today. Today, schools get painted on a contract basis. We're going to hire a painting crew to come in, paint the school. We don't need Ralph on salary and insurance and payroll for 3 decades, right? So a lot of it is we are evolving from a ownership educational standpoint where a lot of what we do is A/B testing as operators, right? Where it's like, hey, I have this growth plan. I think I should hire A, B, C, and D and put them in these positions in order to sustain this growth plan that I have. But at the end of the day, the growth plan doesn't work. It's just, hey, we got to let them go and let's move on to the next thing. Right. So we see a lot of this, especially in like sales roles too. Like my brother-in-law works for a pharmaceutical sales company, and he's the only territory rep in the greater Boston area. He said before he joined, they used to have 6 sales rep positions. Well, especially as companies, especially who have great brands and great products grow, they understand that, all right, well, now we really don't need as many sales reps to grow because we've already grown. People already know our product. Our doctors already recommend us. Whether or not we have 6 people employed for $120,000 a year, they're not giving any value to the company because we've already grown the company to the point where we don't need them anymore. And now it's more A/B testing with him where he's like, a lot of the positions are not so much sales based where they bring in people, and it's not so much anymore in regards to we can't blame the companies for laying off people because we've gotten smarter from that standpoint. The only thing we can do is really blame them in regards to how they communicate that layoff. But in regards to the layoffs in general, it's just people are just getting smarter and they try shit. It doesn't work out. Hey, sorry, you got to go, Jerry. You weren't, you're not generating me a 3 or 4x ROI. So unfortunately, that's just the manner of which we live in today is you A/B test as a business owner. And if it doesn't work, you got to go.
So really quick, I want to call out something. So it obviously bothered you, right? It was not an easy decision. You pushed it off for 6 months. I think that speaks though to the culture of the business, you as a leader, because you're a great leader, right? And I think we then look at Intuit up there, right? And I think eventually, so the culture you have is also a reason why you have such great retention with your clients, like BattlBox, right? We love the culture that Praella is. I think at some point, and Jimmy, you could probably speak to this too, at some point, the culture that got you from 0 to 100 or whatever that number is, you know the importance of the culture and you hold on to it. Eventually, at some point, whether it's at 100 million or 500 million or $1 billion or way before that, at some point you lose the culture. And when you lose the culture, it becomes a spreadsheet. It becomes black and white. These are the lowest performing 10%. I'm sorry, you underperformed. You're fired.
That's the PE playbook.
And I don't disagree with that. And thanks for the kind words. And I'm actually going to pass it to Jimmy because he shared something with us. My problem is that I understand companies need to lay off. I understand people have gotten smarter, and we can discuss this for a long time. My problem is if you as a CEO or as a leader fumble something and mess it up because you didn't execute or provide the right support, you're also responsible for people's performance. It is a two-way street.
The buck stops with you.
Yeah. My problem in Intuit, you can't just say, those are our 10 bottom performance and we're letting them go. There's also an aspect as you as a leader, whomever is CEO or their manager, they have to own up to it.
Of course. Prime example in the news right now, the head of the Secret Service.
I'm sorry, you had
the head of the Secret Service.
Yeah.
The buck stopped with her.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you shared a story with us a while ago when you started to scale the team that before you had Amer. You were on the show, and this is the type of leadership I also appreciate. Jimmy said, I thought I could hire a bunch of people, give him a bunch of leads, and it's going to work. Jimmy said, I effed up.
Yeah.
And that's not
Owned it.
That's the thing. That what bothers me with these companies, own your freaking pitfalls.
Yep.
I went in front of my entire team and I apologized to my team. I'm sorry you let them down.
It's a culture. It's a culture thing.
The issue is, though, the bigger you get, you can't own up to a certain amount of things because of your stock value, right? Because of your right. So you come to a certain point where you make so much money that, unfortunately, right, if you want to be able to grow your business to that point, you have to kiss that goodbye, or else you're never ever going to get to that $1 billion valuation, because you have to please other people than your personal beliefs, right? So like Elon Musk couldn't go into acquiring X and be like, oh, like, you know, due to this is how I personally feel. He's like, whoa, you guys hired way too many people before. I have to lay you off. I don't care how bad of a guy I have to look. At the end of the day, when you want to make an extraordinary amount of money, you can't be a good human being anymore. And I truly believe that.
Interesting.
Which is a shame.
It's a shame, but it's true.
Yeah.
I think so. Like, I think even the Elon Musk, even though I didn't necessarily agree with everything he did, I understood the reasons he did it. The man just put, I don't know what it was, $40 billion of his money, and he has to say, like, how the hell do I make it back?
Yeah.
And I can't make it back by carrying a burden of the previous leadership's potential pitfalls. And that happens with any regime change.
Yeah, it's a business change.
It is. It is a business change, and he had to look at the books and make that decision.
Yeah.
I may not necessarily agree in the way he did it, but to me, what he was saying, I understand.
Yeah.
Intuit is a multi-billion-dollar company. I understand you got to protect your stock. I guess what ends up happening is, what do you want, or how do you want to reflect your company?
Yeah.
Do you know?
But you know, you got to remember one thing, Amer. With a company that large, they're all working for someone, all the way up the chain.
Yeah.
Right? And if you own it, Amer, if you own it, think about this.
You're gone.
You're gone too, buddy. You're all in self-sustaining, political protection, trying to make it the other guy. The finger-pointing game occurs. And, you know, founders obviously have an innate ability to own and be well, they don't all, but a lot of them can and will. And I think that's what makes us special. But oftentimes when you start creating that larger corporate environment, it's impossible to do that because they need to point at something. If the CEO said, I fucked up, this is a very large organization, 11,000 people, I fucked up and I had to do this. Well, what is his board going to say to him? Why did you do that? They already know he messed up, right? But they need to make it look like a certain thing. And I think that's always the challenge that happens. And, for me, when I've had to make these decisions, I've owned up with him. But the reality is, at some level, there was a performance thing that was occurred to him, right? We go through an exercise to figure out who you're going to keep. I call this thing that I learned this from an old CFO of mine. I call it the boat exercise. You got a certain amount of money. That's your boat. You throw everybody out into the water and you start picking up one by one. When your boat's full, you're done, right? And that's the reality, because here's the thing. You could either save, and this is where, Amer, you said you took like 6 months. I think that to me is like something that you got to start overcoming a little bit more, because one of the things I've learned in business myself ultimately is sometimes it's 2 people to go to save 90.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the reality is, dude, you being the leader have to make the best decision to make decisions like that. That can be extremely hard. But I also think the faster you make those decisions, the faster it weighs off your shoulder, the faster you can charge forward too. So like in my humble opinion, like when I make these decisions, like, it's hard, but it's also, you've got to be swift and move fast on it, but you have to drive a good narrative around it and you've got to be able to say it. And I think that's where Intuit probably failed too, is like they didn't drive a good narrative, but also just the timing and a lot of things. They just acquired a couple companies. I mean, it's a weird, interesting thing, and it's probably not because if money was tight or budgets were missed. It was probably because they wanted to make more EBITDA.
Yeah.
That's probably the truth of the decision behind it.
Yeah,
100%.
But that's the thing. People that have experience, and I've seen this like with all those tech layoffs, it's like they'll do a huge round of layoffs and then they'll hire a bunch of new people. And
but to that thing, right? The business changes. The people that they lay off often are evolved under the business, meaning the business has moved forward and they haven't been able to grow, and they're rehiring people, or they could be for market cap, whatever. Dude, hiring an employee is very expensive.
It is.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
Hiring someone, training for 3-6 months and then they leave, dude, that's an expensive thing. It's outsizing the salary and everything else that comes from the learning, the teaching, the meetings, the education that we've given them, the time we've put into them just to get them to the place that we want them to get to.
Yeah.
And so you think about that, and it's not an easy decision, but oftentimes the reason why they rehire these people and they put these jobs back up often is because, well, the reality is they didn't have the right qualified people, and it is a performance thing.
Yeah.
So in John's thing, like, yes, it is. It probably didn't need to be mass blanketed like that. They could have done it differently, but why they thought they were doing it is probably because A, there was a timing sensitivity, but also culturally, it is still easier to say, I'm going to go lay off these 1,100 people, I'm done, and then I'm taking them going versus 3 people here, 5 people here, 7 people here, 12 people here. The culture of fear starts to come up. And to protect the culture, this tends to be the best business way of attacking these moments.
And I think in today's world too, whether it's internally in their company or externally even for them, as long as they don't become a repeat offender for this, 3 months from now, numbers are going to remember.
Well, that happens all the time though, dude. Companies will do a layoff and then 3 months later do another one.
As soon as everybody forgets to do it.
Yeah, they do another one. And it's been happening all year round this year. Tesla's done it all year round. And it's just part of life. And to Bryan's point there, people are smarter. They take more risks these days. There's more people available who want to take the risk. Capital was, flush in the market for years now. So people were willing to kind of go out of their way and things are changing again.
A lot of the big guys are doing it.
And I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying. My just thing is like there's better ways.
Yeah, no, ethically, I think it's terrible.
I think we're all on them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I think we all have strong EQ in that sense as people. And there's no doubt that we think about it. But I think it's a topic that people, they shy away talking about because it's embarrassing to people. As a founder, it is embarrassing sometimes to say that you've had to do it. But I look back in my perspective and I say, if I didn't do it, I wouldn't have saved the business. I wouldn't have pivoted. I wouldn't have done the things that I did. When I talked about that story, laying off all the I literally laid him off and the only person that could do the job was me. So I basically put all the work back on me. Yeah. Right? Because I'm owning it and I realize that I'm the person that needs to do it. But the reality is like, that's really hard for a lot of people to accept, especially when you don't have the ownership, right? Most people are employees in a large company. Again, they don't want ownership over that. They don't want to be owned or be the guy who does it. They're just doing their job.
Yep.
And it's really weird to say that, but people are just doing their job.
It is, yeah.
Bryan?
No, I agree.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think we're all on the same page. I think we all have this, all 4 of us have the same thought process surrounding like ethics and being a good human being. I just think it's going to keep getting worse and worse in regards to the layoffs. I think regardless of what people want to say about Gen Z and the new generation, we're getting a smarter workforce in regards to the ability to output work in a shorter amount of time.
And know their value.
Yeah. And then you pile that on top of cost arbitrage and everyone outsourcing now, right? Like all these companies too, where people are pointing fingers and saying, hey, like you just laid off 1,100 people and they're mad about that. Like 60% of their workforce is overseas. Like you should be mad about, if you're really getting mad, right, about being ethical, like why are you hiring in India, right? For an example, like I would be more mad about that, about a company versus laying off people in the US. Like, why are you taking your business, your US business overseas, right? So there's so many different elements that are going to continue to compile and it's just a matter of just dealing with the times.
Yeah.
I'm
hungry.
Yeah. Well, look, guys, I think this has been a really cool episode. Like, we got into a little bit of a unique thing. I'm going to end it on a happy note, right? One piece of advice you can give a person who's looking for a job, right? Because we're talking about like war stories and stuff. Like, one thing that they can bring to you that makes you, what's a good way of thinking about this? Like, how do we give a piece of advice for people to understand, like, the questions that you should ask or, like, the things that they should ask as an employee to understand a business? Like, we talked last episode about, like, finding in, like, the hiring woes, but I think what we've just talked about here today, especially on the layoff drama, is like employees can be more educated and ask more specific questions to the business to understand where they are in their landscape of the business and make a better decision if this is the right job for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any piece of
go first?
You have a piece of advice? Like,
oh no, I don't want to go first.
I don't want to go first. Either.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, well, I'll go first then. Okay. So if I'm giving people advice, the thing that I tell people is it depends on the industry you're in. I'm in tech, right? So I'm going to give you tech advice. And when you're tech, you should ask very specific questions like, when was your last round? Are you profitable or not? When's your cash run out date? When's the last time you've had to make a tough... These are questions that show not only intelligence, but also awareness about a business and understanding it. And I think these are good questions to ask as someone on the other side to understand the viability of the business on the other side. And if they can't answer to you directly, well, you know what kind of culture they're going to have. If they can't answer it directly and they don't know, then you know that they're not talking about it internally and no one knows. That's a problem, right? And these are hard questions to ask as a person, but I've learned that when those people ask me those questions, I know that this person is thinking about the long-term thought process of the business. Anyone want to add to that? I know I threw it.
Yeah, so those are good questions. There's other questions that I think are sometimes bad questions.
Like what?
So like when someone someone when we're going through the interview process and they spend 20% of their time asking about the PTO plan and sorry, maybe I'm being insensitive, but when they're drilling down on that and understanding, work from remote and how much can I get extra time off and like digging into that and spending too much time on that in the beginning, the infancy of an interview. And maybe I'm flawed here, but it rubs me the wrong way sometimes.
I think yes and no. The reason is I've been in interviews where I do kind of ask like, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And I've heard stories where somebody will say like, I booked my wedding date, they knew it, and then they told me I can't have it. I've heard like some really horror
Yeah, and I
stories
think
from
they made a bad job of going there and working for that company. So I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think there's other ways to understand the culture.
Yeah.
And the
business.
vibe,
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm
then
saying.
drilling down and being so pointed with the question. Ask some open-ended questions to better understand work culture.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the advice, actually.
Okay.
Is open-ended questions versus pointed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thanks, because you pushed back and you gave me the right answer.
Anyone else? Good?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. I know we went all sorts of directions on this episode. It was kind of interesting, but we did. We went into a little bit of war stories. We started dumping into a little bit more of the recent drama. And as this pod comes out, I think it's going to be interesting because I'm looking at the timing of it. Q3, at least when we're shooting this pod, Q2 is just ending in the corporate world. It's about to be a bloodbath in August and September, unfortunately, because I know according to my stocks, I think people are missing the freaking numbers right now hard. And that means that they need to make some adjustments for shareholder value, which means that this episode may be really relevant in the fact that it's what's happening in the market today. And I think it's hard, man. From small business to big business, this is going to happen continuously until we right-size ourselves. Remember, what goes up must come down. And in COVID, everything went up and to the right.
Yeah.
And so everything's kind of getting adjusted here. So anyways, that was episode 11. Please like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, tell us what you think. I think that all of these things are really important for us. If you can help us out, of course, follow us on social, X, Twitter, TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're everywhere. We are a video first podcast. So please, if you're listening to this podcast and you've gotten all the way to the end here, you must enjoy it. If you love to see our lovely faces, jump on the YouTube channel. Our next episode we're going to do is we're going to get back a little bit more tactical and you're going to center us back on and start talking about it a little bit different. We're going to talk about prepping for a launch of a product, service, or business. We're going to talk about successes and failures and learnings around that and how we should be thinking about it as we're approaching it. I think all of us have different stories of new recent ventures and tries and attempts that we might have. And I'm sure we've learned a lot of new stuff that we've talked about. So looking forward to talking with you guys about that. All right. With that, guys, episode 11, that's a wrap. I'll see you later.
Welcome to the ASOM Pod, where we talked a lot. Ecom was the path that we walked a lot. But now the question is, will you subscribe or not? Ha!